On November 8, 1942, as American troops landed at the beaches of North Africa, they carried with them a strange and secret weapon. Packed inside sealed wooden crates was a steel tube with a few small rockets. Most soldiers had never seen anything like it. No one knew it would soon change the way infantry fought tanks. The weapon looked simple, just a hollow tube, light enough for one man to carry on his shoulder. But when fired, the rocket inside could melt through thick armor. It was small, cheap, and deadly. Soldiers nicknamed it the bazooka, and within months it became one of the most important weapons of the war. The story of the bazooka began months earlier at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. Engineers were searching for a portable anti-tank weapon that could be used by regular soldiers. Many designs failed. They were heavy, slow, or too complex for battlefield use. Then one officer decided to experiment with spare parts. Using a scrap metal pipe and a simple sight made from a coat hanger, he built a launcher and fired a small rocket at a test target. To everyone's surprise, the rocket hit perfectly and tore through the armor plate. That moment marked the birth of the first real bazooka. The test results amazed the observers. They immediately sent reports to the higher command, recommending that the design go into mass production. The U.S. Army needed something fast, light, and effective, and the bazooka fit all three requirements perfectly. Factories across America were soon retooled to build the new weapon. General Electric and other companies began producing thousands of launchers and rockets every month. The design was so simple that it could be built with basic materials: steel tubing, wires, and a small ignition system. Because of its low cost, every infantry unit could now have its own anti-tank teams. Soldiers were quickly trained on how to use it. Load the rocket, aim carefully, press the trigger, and move away before the enemy spotted them. The idea was speed, surprise, and teamwork. The weapon's first real test came during Operation Torch in North Africa. Crates of bazookas arrived on the beach along with the landing troops. However, since they were new and secret, few soldiers knew how to assemble or fire them properly. Many had to figure it out during battle. Some early rockets failed to fire because of moisture or rough handling during the sea voyage. Others worked perfectly and shocked both the Americans and their enemies. Tanks that once felt invincible were suddenly destroyed by a single soldier with a shoulder launcher. Word of this new weapon spread quickly across the battlefield. German troops who captured a few examples sent them back to their engineers for study. Within months, Germany began developing its own version, inspired by what the Americans had created. In German laboratories, engineers examined the captured launchers carefully. They were surprised by the simplicity of the American design. There were no expensive parts, no complicated sights, and no heavy metal casings. Everything about it was made for speed and practicality. The Germans decided to create a larger version using a bigger rocket, which would later become known as the Panzerschreck. While the Germans worked on their copy, the Americans continued improving their own model. Early problems like weak electrical contacts and unreliable ignition were fixed. New versions used stronger magnets and better batteries, making the weapon more dependable in combat. Each improvement was guided by reports from the soldiers who used them on the front lines. Soon, the bazooka became a symbol of hope for infantrymen. Soldiers who once feared enemy tanks now felt confident. They could hide behind walls, wait for the right moment, and fire at the weak spots of armor. The feeling of helplessness was gone, replaced by courage and clever tactics. In battles across Tunisia and Sicily, bazooka teams began to prove their worth. They learned how to use cover, move quietly, and work in pairs. One man would carry the launcher while another held the rockets. Coordination was key, and the bond between teammates often decided life or death in the chaos of battle. When the weapon fired, the roar of the rocket and the bright flash created both fear and excitement. The enemy often mistook the blast for artillery fire, which added confusion to their ranks. Many tanks were abandoned after being hit, even if the damage wasn't fatal. The psychological impact was as powerful as the explosion itself. German field reports began to show a change in tactics. Tank commanders started avoiding narrow streets or dense villages, fearing surprise attacks. Infantry support became necessary wherever tanks went. The balance between man and machine had shifted, and the small, tube-shaped weapon was the reason behind it. Meanwhile, back in the United States, production was running at full speed. Thousands of launchers rolled out of factories every week, and millions of rockets were shipped to Europe, Africa, and the Pacific. The simplicity of the design made it ideal for mass production during wartime pressure. By the time of the Italian campaign, the bazooka had become a common sight on the battlefield. Soldiers used it not only against tanks but also to destroy bunkers, machine gun nests, and even walls. Its role expanded from an anti-tank tool to a multi-purpose weapon for close combat. In the cities of Italy, narrow streets and stone buildings made tank movement difficult. Bazooka teams took advantage of this, ambushing armored vehicles from windows or rooftops. The surprise factor turned every corner into a potential trap. For the first time, tanks were afraid of foot soldiers. This new reality forced the enemy to change strategies. Tanks were no longer unstoppable giants but vulnerable targets. The battlefield was evolving fast, and the bazooka was at the heart of that transformation. As the weapon gained more fame, American engineers continued to refine its design. They created new versions that could be taken apart into two pieces for easier carrying. Airborne troops especially benefited from this feature, as they could jump from planes with the launcher packed neatly in their gear and quickly reassemble it after landing. The improved models also had better electrical systems that made firing more reliable. Instead of batteries that sometimes failed, a magneto system was added, generating the needed spark through movement. This small change reduced misfires and made soldiers more confident when it mattered most. In the jungles of the Pacific, the bazooka played a very different role. Japanese forces used bunkers and caves rather than tanks, but the rocket's explosive power still made it useful. Soldiers used it to clear fortified positions and destroy enemy shelters hidden in dense terrain. The weapon's flexibility made it valuable in every kind of battlefield. The psychological effect of the weapon was undeniable. Both allies and enemies respected its power. A single soldier with a bazooka could stop a tank column or break an enemy stronghold. It gave infantrymen a new sense of equality on the battlefield. They no longer depended completely on artillery or air support. By 1943, photographs of soldiers carrying bazookas appeared in newspapers around the world. The weapon became a symbol of American ingenuity, proof that creativity and simplicity could defeat complexity. Even the name bazooka, borrowed from a comedian's homemade musical instrument, added a touch of charm to its deadly reputation. German military intelligence kept a close eye on these developments. Their engineers built the heavier Panzerschreck and Panzerfaust, inspired by the American model, but scaled up for more power. These weapons were more destructive, but also heavier and harder to move. Once again, the Americans had shown that balance between power and portability mattered most. By the time of the Normandy invasion in 1944, nearly every U.S. infantry squad carried at least one bazooka. Training schools taught soldiers exactly how to use them in coordinated attacks. They learned to aim for specific weak spots: tracks, rear armor, and turret joints. Experience had turned the simple weapon into a precise tool of destruction. During the Normandy campaign, bazooka teams played a key role in breaking through enemy defenses. They operated from hedgerows, trenches, and ruined houses, using stealth and timing. Many German tanks were disabled before they even reached the main lines. The combination of surprise, speed, and teamwork made these small teams incredibly effective. In the thick hedgerows of France, tanks often couldn't see the infantry hiding close by. Soldiers would wait silently, holding their breath as enemy engines rumbled past. When the moment was right, one shot could decide the outcome of a fight. These moments of bravery defined the weapon's legacy. As the war continued, reports of successful bazooka ambushes multiplied. Commanders started planning operations around these teams, using them as mobile anti-tank units. What began as an experimental weapon was now reshaping entire military strategies. In the cities and villages of France, bazooka teams became the hidden guardians of the infantry. They positioned themselves behind rubble, inside ruined buildings, and even inside drainage ditches, waiting for the sound of enemy armor. When a tank appeared, they held their breath, aimed carefully, and fired. The rocket's hiss was followed by an explosion that echoed through narrow streets. These moments were terrifying and heroic at the same time. Many soldiers described the thrill of watching a tank burst into flames, mixed with fear of being spotted by enemy machine guns. It was a weapon that demanded both courage and precision, because missing a shot often meant certain death. The German commanders began to fear urban combat. Their tanks, once symbols of power, now had to move cautiously through every town. Infantry support became mandatory, and tank crews often refused to advance without nearby soldiers clearing the streets first. The days of unstoppable armored assaults were over. As more units gained experience, the bazooka was used creatively. Some soldiers modified the rockets to create makeshift explosives for destroying walls or barricades. Others experimented with firing at enemy sniper nests hidden in upper floors. The weapon's adaptability turned it into a multi-purpose tool of war. Reports from the front described how the bazooka not only changed tactics but also morale. Soldiers felt empowered, even against the strongest enemy vehicles. Commanders praised its simplicity, saying it gave ordinary men extraordinary power. The weapon became a symbol of equality between infantry and armor. In factories back home, women and men working long shifts took pride in producing the weapon that protected their troops overseas. Each launcher was checked carefully, each rocket inspected for flaws. The spirit of mass production and teamwork reflected the unity of the nation during wartime. By 1944, the American Army had produced hundreds of thousands of launchers and millions of rockets. They were shipped to every front: Europe, Africa, and the Pacific. The ease of assembly allowed soldiers to replace broken parts quickly, keeping the weapon active even under harsh conditions. When winter arrived and the Battle of the Bulge began, bazooka teams once again proved their worth. In the snowy forests of Belgium, American soldiers used them to ambush German tanks hidden among the trees. The cold was brutal, the snow deep, but the weapon continued to perform reliably. Even as newer tanks appeared with thicker armor, the bazooka remained a threat. Its rockets might not always destroy heavy tanks completely, but they damaged vital components: tracks, engines, or vision ports, forcing the enemy to retreat. Every hit counted, and every successful shot saved lives. By the end of 1944, it was clear that this simple steel tube had changed the rules of ground warfare. It showed that power did not always come from size or complexity. Sometimes it came from simplicity, courage, and clever design. As the war neared its end, the bazooka became part of every infantry squad's identity. Soldiers carried it not just as a weapon, but as a symbol of strength and hope. Many wrote in their diaries that the simple launcher gave them courage even in impossible situations. In early 1945, production reached its highest point. Thousands of factories across the United States built launchers and rockets day and night. This incredible output meant that every unit, no matter how far from headquarters, had access to the same deadly tool. It was proof of how American industry could outproduce any enemy. On the battlefield, the bazooka continued to adapt. Some airborne units used the lighter M18 model made from aluminum, while others preferred the improved M9A1 with better sights and reliability. The weapon's evolution was constant, always learning from real combat and improving for the next fight. When Germany's final counterattacks collapsed, captured documents revealed just how much fear the bazooka had caused. German officers wrote that the weapon forced them to abandon fast assaults and instead move carefully through every town. The speed and confidence of blitzkrieg were gone forever. Even after the war, the bazooka's story was not over. Its design inspired weapons all over the world. The British PYAT, the German Panzerfaust, and later the Soviet RPG series. The simple idea of a man-portable anti-tank launcher became a global standard that continues to shape modern warfare. In Korea, the upgraded Super Bazooka proved its worth again. Against the new generation of enemy tanks, it showed that the same concept, a portable, easy-to-use rocket launcher, still worked perfectly. Soldiers once again relied on it to stop powerful armored attacks at close range. The real legacy of the bazooka was not just in the number of tanks it destroyed, but in how it changed soldiers' minds. It gave the infantry confidence, made them fearless, and reminded them that even a single person could make a difference in a massive battle. Military historians later called it one of the most important inventions of the 20th century. It was a weapon built not from luxury materials or complex machines, but from creativity, urgency, and faith in ordinary soldiers. That simplicity made it powerful. By the end of World War II, over 476,000 bazookas and more than 15 million rockets had been produced. Each one represented a piece of American ingenuity, built by factory workers who believed their efforts could help end the war. And they were right. The bazooka helped turn the tide of battle across continents.